Okay, I'm going to talk about the cap and trade bill today. One of the worst pieces of legislation ever. All done in the name of global warming, which I remain very skeptical of. Let me start out by talking about the suppressed EPA report on global warming. This was a 98-page report that basically calls into question the notion that CO2 emissions are directly related to temperatures. I was watching the Glenn Beck program on Fox News. Yes, I watch Fox News. And I believe that they had the primary author of the report, Alan Carlin, on the show. They showed a couple graphs, and they were really eye-opening. The first one showed the CO2 emissions from 2001 to 2009, just rapidly increasing, skyrocketing. It also showed the average temperature change from 2001 to 2009, and it was slightly decreasing. Odd, isn't it? How can that be when CO2 emissions are what are causing this so-called global warming catastrophe are skyrocketing, temperatures are actually decreasing? That's odd. He then showed a second graph which showed a few interesting things. This time the graph was from 1990 to 2030. It showed the average temperatures from the times available, 1990 to 2009. It also showed CO2 emissions from 1990 to 2009. Remember, none of this stuff so far is speculation. This is all facts. CO2 emissions are increasing, and temperatures are decreasing. Anyways, it then showed the UN prediction of global temperatures if nothing is done, and then another line showing the UN prediction of global temperatures if the entire world starts taking the so-called right steps to reduce CO2 emissions and save the world. These predictions run from 2000 to 2030. The prediction has temperatures running absolutely rampant and will rise even with the UN sanctions being put into place, though at about the same rate that in which temperatures are decreasing in, reality. Anyways, at the time when real-world temperatures and UN predictions were able to coincide from 2000 to 2009, real-life temperatures have been significantly lower even than their ideal graph of what temperatures would be if the world perfected global warming legislation. Real life is better than their ideal, actually. Anyways, the world has not perfected these UN sanctions, and yet temperatures are actually below that perfected line. They are way beneath the line in which they predicted what would happen if we did what we actually have done, which is little. How this doesn't put people up in arms questioning global warming is beyond me. Plain and simple, it's a farce. The government uses fear to gain control. The government uses fear to gain control. They've done it with the threat of terrorism. They did it with communism. They did it in Massachusetts with the threat of the swine flu. Yeah. Meanwhile, even the state governments are using fear to gain power. This bill in Massachusetts is essentially a martial law bill specifically mandating a few things. Shoot, the federal government has essentially the same mandates through FEMA. This time through a fear of immigration and terrorism. I was going to, but I'm actually not going to get into all of that in this video. I'll make a separate video about how the government uses fear to gain power. This video is about global warming and cap and trade. So anyways, back to global warming. Think of how much power the government gets through global warming. They can increase taxes, thus increase revenue, thus increase power. They can, through things like this, control what we do in the privacy of our own homes. They can control our lives. If that isn't power, I don't know what is. Power in the name of fear, of global warming. The most severe form of this power trip yet is the cap and trade bill, which is already passed in the House, and it looks to be a close vote in the Senate. I honestly think it's going to pass. I mean, at this point, it seems the government will do anything and everything in its power to run this country into the ground, and I can't see this bill being any different. Basically, what this bill is a massive energy tax, and I mean massive. The biggest tax increase in American history. The biggest energy tax in American history. The theory is, of course, that if you have to pay more to use energy, you won't use as much. The problem with this is twofold. First of all, the government has absolutely no right to control the amount of energy we use. We're paying for it through the free market, something the federal government doesn't care too much for. Is global warming something that, regardless of what you hear, is not scientifically conclusive? really pressing enough that we're willing to give up our freedom in order to combat it? Combat it at a minuscule level, mind you. Experts say cap and trade will not even make a dent in global temperatures. It's all a means to control you. Now the question is, how much is this control grab by the government going to cost you? The EPA, of course, majorly lowballs this figure and says it will cost the average family $175 per year. More, accurate estimates say that this will cost the average family over $3,000 per year. That's huge. Not to mention, the cost of virtually all forms of energy are going to nearly double. That's right, double. Can you afford that? Can you afford an extra over $3,000 per year? Now the question is, even if it really was only $175 per year, are you willing to pay even 1 cent for the government to take away your freedoms? Now there are a couple more aspects to this. Sure, energy costs will skyrocket, but what about the cost of virtually every other American-made product? That's right, businesses are going to have to pay this tax as well. The incredible costs to the businesses will, of course, be passed on to the consumer. Everything will go up in costs. And the question is, are businesses willing to limit their energy consumption just to stay in America? No, the corporations will simply take their business elsewhere. They will avert the tax and will pollute at least as much, if not more, in another country. That's right, this bill may be making CO2 emissions higher. Now, with the economy the way it is decreasing spending on energy and indirectly shipping jobs overseas the way to improve the economy? No, this will make it much worse. Ironically, Pelosi said that this bill was about, quote, jobs, jobs, jobs. Sure, it will create jobs. That's undeniable. But the system we are essentially mimicking is the cap and trade system done in Spain. This bill in Spain did create jobs. The problem is, for every job created, they lost 2.2 jobs. They lost over double the jobs they created. So by now you should see that this bill doesn't help the already suspect global warming, it doesn't help the economy, it doesn't enhance our personal freedoms, and it doesn't help our personal pocketbooks. It doesn't help anything. So why is the government passing it? Power. Now this bill passed 219 to 212 in the House. 8 Republicans voted for it. Without the votes of those Republicans, it wouldn't have even passed in the House. Now what happened to the supposed conservatism of Republicans? You see, mainstream politics is mainstream politics. They're both going down essentially the same path, so I gotta plug it. Vote for the one party that actually wants less power in government. Vote for the Libertarian Party.